Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, co-host. Thank you, Daniel, for being here.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Good. And
Good.
Today we have a lot more information. We've talked about impeachment, and sometimes we belittle it as it's not going to solve the problems of the world. But, yesterday was an interesting day for me because I listened to a good bit of the opening statement that was favorable to the Democrats, and then they rushed to their microphones and all the TV stuff and declared victory. It's over. Trump is out. And probably so, but that's the way the ball bounces. Then by the end of the day, it turned it around and they showed this guy was not being straightforward.
Yeah.
So they talked to him, and by the end of the day, the Republicans had a total victory. So they're both winning, and maybe it's scheduled that way. Maybe in their plans, you have to have equal balance there. But there's still a lot of animosity there, a lot of fighting going on, and nobody knows what's going to happen. But hopefully the people who are telling the biggest lies lose. And I don't think there's much of a decision to make about who are telling the big lies. But yesterday we talked about impeachment, and we followed up on a theory that we have is sometimes when big things are happening and there's a lot of fighting going on, look elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because there's something else going on that they don't want to talk about. Who knows? Maybe what the Federal Reserve did this week on some of their announcement. Maybe that's the big issue of the day. Or maybe there's some foreign policy. Yesterday we argued the case that none of these people care about a foreign policy. They endorse the foreign policy of having a war with Iran and trying to stir up trouble with Russia. They seem to agree on that. So is this ongoing? Well, I think it's the same way. But today it isn't a war. The war is still being planned, or the antagonisms of the military-industrial complex can make their money.
Yeah.
But right now, if you look at a vote yesterday, we could argue the case the distraction was to have a continuation of the war against American citizens.
Yeah.
That's what happened after 9/11. Boy, we have to do something. 3,000 Americans were killed. So now it's up to what? Is it 800,000 people have been killed subsequently from our foreign policy since that time?
Yeah.
So here it is. Yesterday, they extended the Patriot Act, something we've been fighting from the very beginning. And can you believe it? And I imagine you can, that it was a conspiracy between, Pelosi and the president. They both wanted it, and a few Republicans, voted against it for, as for political reason. But Thomas Massey opposed it for principle of it and why it's insane on what they're doing.
Yeah, and what they did is very sneaky, and this is what they do a lot. And Massey called them out yesterday, but what they did is they snuck it in on page 25 of a must-pass continuing resolution, right? We got to keep funding government. Can't let that government not be funded. So they snuck it in on page 25. It's a little one-liner extending the warrantless data collection provisions of the Patriot Act set to expire on December 15th. Now will expire March 15th, 2020, so just a little bit more time that they can illegally spy on the rest of us. And as you point out, it was bipartisan.
Right. And I heard you make a point the other day, which I think is pretty good, so I'm going to steal it. And that is, the stupid principle, they complain against each other, but then they give each other more power.
Yeah.
And your point was, they really, really do hate Trump.
Yeah.
But they went out of their way to make sure that he had more surveillance authority over every American. And it makes, even though this, renewal of the Patriot Act is bad news, but they want to make it worse than that. They're in favor of expanding this surveillance and giving more power to the president.
Yeah, on one hand, he's an unhinged lunatic who needs to be taken out of office. They even talked about, the 25th Amendment. He's insane. We got to get him out of office. Oh, but let's give him a lot more power and a lot more money. Mr. Massey captured it really well here, and I'll just read a little quote. He really gets it. The scam here is that Democrats are alleging abuse of presidential power while simultaneously reauthorizing warrantless power to spy on citizens that no president should have. in a bill that continues to fund everything the president does. And they are violating their own rules to do it because they snuck it in. They passed a resolution to allow it to bring it up on the same day rather than the 72 hours to actually read the bill. So they didn't want to read it. They didn't want anyone to know what's in it. They just wanted to pass it and get it done.
And leadership follows the rules. You don't get into leadership unless you bow to the leaders, of the land. But I think his name is Doug Collin, who is the ranking member on Judiciary Committee.
Yeah.
And of course, he did these perfunctory greetings when they opening up the bill. High praise for Jerry Nadler, wonderful Jerry Nadler, and they went on, and he's the ranking member for the Republicans, and of course Nadler returned the compliments. Yeah. It's just so hypocritical. I guess it's so much worse when they get away with the pretense that we're going to save the country if you elect us, and making this big game of the election going on. To actually, the more I think about this issue, the longer I've been in politics, the less I think elections accomplish. It gives an endorsement of what it already has done because they can control elections in so many ways because elections essentially aren't very free. They're usually regulated, but we can always blame it on the Russians and the Chinese for regulating it rather than looking at the real causes, and that is the special interests who want it, and the people. There's a lot of people who endorse the giveaways, the freebies. At the same time, they want to protect the authority, and that's what we're talking about here, because both parties need the authority, but we'll argue over who gets to pull the strings and which people get the gravy for a while, but we don't want to disrupt things. The deep state is there on purpose, and no matter what they say and do, I think the collapse is the only thing that's going to get rid of them and expose how evil and corrupt it is.
Yeah, talk about craven. Adam Dick, at the Institute wrote about this, and it's on our front page of our website, ronpaulinstitute.org. But the whole Collins thing, Doug Collins, Republican from Georgia, is so craven. He actually, as you say, thanked Jerry Nadler for hiding it in the bill. And then he also thanked Sensenbrenner, who's the author of the Patriot Act. And then when we found out, thanks to Ed Snowden, that the whole thing was illegal, what they were doing, they reformed it, and Sensenbrenner went back and wrote the Freedom Act, which is as bad as the Patriot Act. He thanked these guys. I think, why would he do that? Well, I think the reason, Dr. Paul, is that they don't want a debate. They want to hide it in there because they don't want to go down to the floor and have to defend allowing spying on American citizens. And
that fits into our scenario that, in truth, on the big issues, there's no disagreement. It's just a matter of grandstanding. But we've mentioned this other plan that's going on. It's not a bill, and to me, it looks like it's not even going to need congressional approval. And we talked about it, and it's a plan to establish a federal pre-crime unit. Yeah. Barr is leading the charge on that, and Republicans like him because he's going to expose the Democrats, but he doesn't seem to be very concerned about the liberties of American citizens. But Trump has endorsed what he's doing. I mean, he's not acting on his own, but they've already issued a memoranda out to the FBI, and they have training sessions to know how to use this. And the whole thing is, it's this whole idea of a pre-crime. In many ways, I think we can simplify this by saying it's the repeal of the writ of habeas corpus. Yeah. That's been around since 1215, and it fits into my argument at times. A lot of the good things in life have been known for a long time. Good principles have been laid out there about the rejection of violence. But I would say in my lifetime, the writ of habeas corpus continues to disintegrate, and it certainly have in this century. It's the disintegration. When you look at some of the things that went on with the Kavanaugh hearing and what's going on with these people don't really have rights. You're guilty until proven innocent. But that's the reason the income tax is illegal. Because you're guilty until proven innocent, and you can go to jail. You can die in jail if they really want to put you out of commission for other reasons. And you mentioned a few reasons why people would be watched on this. But the other one, like gun ownership and other, but political viewpoints. We hear more control on certain individuals getting information out as being, treasonous. Truth is treasonous for these people. So this is why I think right now this whole thing that Barr is pushing, the pre-crime unit, I think that, it's a continuation, but I think not only is it a continuation of the Patriot Act, I think it's a huge magnification of these rights and codifying probably what they do anyway. It's the codification of what they want to do and can do and feel better about it because they want to make us safe, and people want to be safe. So therefore, they capitulate. But it used to be if you didn't want to be surveyed, don't get in any trouble. Don't cause a problem, and you don't have to worry about them coming and look at every single thing you do. I've heard that argument too many times.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's the next step. I think they test the waters. Hey, let's spy on everyone. Oh, no one's really that upset. They got a little bit ticked off when Snowden told them about it, but they all went back to their normal lives. So let's do the next step and arrest them before they do a crime. And I actually noticed something that Reason Magazine put up, and I think it's in the same category. U.S. Secret Service wants schools to treat unhappy students as potential violent threats. Pre-crime again. You see some kid looks a little depressed, take him off to the slammer.
And this is also a further endorsement of the red flag laws. Trump was against those laws, but he changed his mind because he was faced with a public relation problem where, one of these mass killers got out. But how often have you heard a real good statistic and immediate asking the question, what kind of drugs has he been on? Could he have been drugged for some nervous condition supposed to make him, a happy person? Most of the time they're on them, and I have never seen somebody, dissecting that out and just find out how many, are actually on these drugs. So that's a contribution by, the way the schools have taken over. It has in the past. The kid that was overly active in class, and not recognizing, well, he's in prison, no wonder why he's active. But they send him to the nurse, and the nurse refers him and probably recommend, and they end up taking drugs that if you were using them on the street, you'd be a drug dealer, but it's just legalized drug use. And in medicine or out of medicine and raising kids and grandchildren, I just really, really worry about the use of those drugs. And personally, I have over the years become much more anti-medication in drugs because, even when you give medications for antibiotics and all, you don't need to do it very often. So it's a mess. But now when they're using this, they don't ask about it, but they'll come up with a statistic and say, this guy's pretty irritable. I think we better have him talk to the psychiatrist. But that's never happened in history before, so that would have to be new. And we know what dictators do.
That's right, exactly. The psychiatric prisons. Well, they did the Patriot Act. They're doing pre-crime while everyone's attention is away. But we should probably touch on a few topics on the impeachment because I have not watched all of the testimony, but I've read about it. And I watched some clips from it. But today is Fiona Hill. She's up there, and her testimony, I don't know if it was leaked or she released it or something, but I saw it on Zero Hedge. You probably saw it too. But it's really fascinating. Fiona Hill was in charge of Russia on the National Security Council staff. She was brought in 2017 by the Trump administration. She had previously served both W and Barack Obama in a similar capacity. But she's a Boltonite neocon, full stop, She's a Boltonite neocon, and here she comes in, and listen, this is some of the stuff from the testimony is incredible. And if you'll indulge me, Dr. Paul, I just want to read one part. This will tell you everything that's wrong. She's warned Congress in her statement against believing a, quote, fictional narrative that it was Ukraine, not Russia, that interfered in our elections, right? Even though evidence upon evidence piles up. Here's what she said. The unfortunate truth is that Russia was the foreign power that systematically attacked our democratic institutions in 2016. This is the public conclusion of our intelligence agencies, it is beyond dispute, even if some of the underlying details must remain classified. Now, this is where it gets really spooky, and this lets a little indication of Trump were paying attention as to what happened to him. Quote, if the president or anyone else impedes or subverts the national security of the United States in order to further domestic, political, or personal interests, that's more than worthy of your attention. She's talking to Congress. So what she's saying in these two separate things is, A, it was the Russians who did it. We know because the intelligence agencies told us. Well, it's actually not true. Because remember, they were handpicked. Handpicked by who? By Brennan, John Brennan, the guy who was single-handedly out to get Trump. He handpicked some analysts and said, here, I want to report. Here's what I wanted to say. And so she's lying right there. But she's also saying that Russia is our enemy. And if you look at some of the other stuff, you can see it. Russia is our enemy. Russia is a threat. And even if a president wants to change that policy, we can't let him.
And that anti-Russia sentiment has been pervasive throughout, the whole week. It's always been brought up. And then if they did want to bring up Russiagate, and really look at it honestly, the Democrats wouldn't be too happy with this because it might drag in Hillary and a few other ones, how they rigged the charges against Trump. But that gets to be a very messy business, and that is why they're always making our case, not my case, our case and the American case for minding our own business and not pretending that expanding our empire and getting involved when we shouldn't be involved is actually a contribution to peace and prosperity, when it is exactly the opposite. It's a contribution to power and solidification of an empire. But what they don't want to realize, and they don't know what's coming, is all empires end.
Yeah.
All you have to do is look at that chart on who had. Empires usually end up with reserve currency. And you can find the last 6 reserve currencies, and they go for 100 years or 200 years. But eventually the power, because you have more power, and you get to control the international financial system. And that's what has bred so much hatred and how many people despise us now because of the sanctions that they put on. I'm going to put on sanctions, and they're really against sanctions. It's just that well, you didn't say it right, you didn't do it right, you should do more on this person. Technicalities of that. But I think I see all these signs that these people who fight and struggle and demand this unity on the empire, they're going to have some real surprises come pretty soon. And I think the failure is there. I think the bankruptcy is self-evident. I think our foreign policy can't be viable for much longer. It's going to be viable for a while because we're still very, very wealthy. Mm-hmm. But what a lot of people don't realize is that we can have a very powerful currency, we can throw our weight around, and we can look very wealthy. But if you look at it, you have to realize that what stands behind it, what is it, real work and effort and creativity? No, it's fake money. Yeah. It's debt that we created, and we've been able to get people to take it and subsidize our extravagance. And what I see is the tremendous weakening on this, and people are going to get fed up. And I think this whole thing of Europe, the European Union, this thing always bugged me yesterday about having the ambassador of the European Union be so instrumental. The European Union wouldn't even be a natural consequence of a voluntary society. This is a consequence of the globalists. Yeah. And so it's people should be prepared, and it's not easy because, in my estimation, the preparation comes from getting as many people to understand what's going on so we can work together when we have to rebuild this society.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing about Fiona Hill, Russia systematically attacked our democratic institutions. Well, the whole Russiagate thing came because the U.S. systematically and literally attacked Ukraine's democratic institutions. We overthrew the president, But I would ask her. I wish I was there because I bet none of the other members will ask her. But I would ask her, what exactly did they do? You say they it's a given thing. We can't even question it. You said it's dangerous to question it. What exactly did they do? They took out some dumpy Facebook ads with Hillary fighting Jesus. Okay, what else exactly did they do?
How much? How much?
What did they do? And even the ads, the Facebook ads, they found out that this Internet Research Agency in Moscow. Remember, the judge here in the U.S. told Mueller and them, stop talking about it as if it's the Russian government because you don't have any proof it is. It was just a spam, So exactly what do they do? Nobody will ever say that. She won't say that. Here's a great expert, right? So it's terrible. But you mentioned the word, if it was, remember the old Groucho Marx, the duck would come down in the ding. You mentioned the word, which is bankruptcy. And that reminds me to remind everyone to support the Ron Paul Institute and the Ron Paul Liberty Report. And we will give you this gift for your support. A minimum of $50 or more, we will send you this, Dr. Paul's latest mini book on our bankruptcy. For $100 or more, he will sign it by hand and we'll mail it off to you. I just ask everyone who's already given, thank you. Be patient. We'll mail them in batches. We do receive your donations and we know that they've been received, but it's a limited time. We want to give these out to you. We want to say thank you for helping us and for helping us spread the word. So make your donation today, ronpaulinstitute.org, and click support. That was also in the information section underneath this video. You'll see a place where you can click and make your donation. Thank you very much.
Very good. Yesterday we had a theme of our program being that the impeachment hearings is a distraction from some more important things, and we touched on foreign affairs and touched on Iran. Today we did the same theme, but this time we said it was just a distraction from the war against the American people that's perpetuated by the leadership of both political parties and a lot of other people, our university professors and the people who want free handouts. Everybody, piles on because you have to have strong authority to keep an empire, stable and obedient. So tomorrow, I don't know what we have. I sort of hope we don't have another war that we have to compare and say, oh, another distraction. And in some of these impeachment hearings, maybe those impeachment hearings will go away pretty soon, but it doesn't look like that. But for some reason, I'm sort of suspicious that maybe the Democrats might back off if the Republicans ever get a chance to really answer some of those questions in a political sense. So time will tell, but in the meantime, we will continue to emphasize what a free and prosperous society should be like, and that is the emphasis on personal liberty. And if that is the case, really, the government should be very small. They wouldn't have much to do. They should, it should be, maybe 10% of the size, which I know will make people hysterical, because they just love the government. But when they run out of money and they can't provide any services, and when a country looks like, if it looks like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, or heaven forbid, like San Francisco, you might want to decide on a different policy. But it doesn't look like San Francisco has learned a lesson yet. They're going to have to invite more people to live on the streets and clutter their streets. And if anybody in a store doesn't clean up after them, they'll arrest the property owner for the mess that they make. I mean, it is totally insane what's going on, and it's totally unnecessary. It is the sacrifice of liberty, and the willing to tolerate authoritarian government and a plan, and the sacrifice of liberty is the problem. It shouldn't be too hard to round up a few people who, once they see what's coming, to say, I think I'd rather go it on my own. I think I can take care of myself and my family a lot better off if I have my liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.